Good evening, this is David again. In my last video I talked a little bit about the original removal of skin and tissue around the mole as well as the lymph node biopsy. Now I want to talk about the treatment options that I had after it was discovered that in fact I did have cancer in lymph nodes. I believe if you don't have cancer in the lymph nodes, they consider you done at this point once you have that removed and you go on your merry way. But if you do become stage 3A or 3 anything, there's a couple of treatments that they're going to want to do or they're going to recommend. One is called a lymph node dissection. So there's clusters of lymph nodes around your body, and the cluster that's closest to the mole, a lymph node dissection is essentially the removal of those lymph nodes, and it's essentially all of those lymph nodes. And then that's the first part of the work that they would want to do. And then after that, they would also want to start you on some type of treatment to potentially remove any cancer or kill any cancer that might in fact be in organs. Again, even if the PET scan came back negative, it can't detect very small amounts of cancer. So if those small amounts exist, the second treatment, typically interferon. We'll talk more about the details in the next, the details and the options in the next video. But that treatment is really to kill anything else in the organs. So right now I'm going to focus on the lymph node dissection in this video. So again, the purpose of lymph node dissection is really just to remove all the lymph nodes so that cancer can't have any possibility of traveling further through your lymph nodes. So you remove them. And there were several concerns I had about this, but maybe one of the greatest was this idea of having lymphedema. So lymph nodes essentially move lymphatic fluid through your body. And when you take out the lymph nodes, your body may have trouble removing that lymphatic fluid from that area. So in my case, the leg. So what can happen is you can come down with a situation called lymphedema, which is essentially swelling of your leg because that lymphatic fluid moves into the leg, but there isn't enough capability. Your body has to move it out of the leg, and so it collects, and your leg swells. And this can vary a lot for different people, depending on a lot of different factors. Essentially my doctors could not say whether I would experience, how severe it would be, or anything of that nature. I was a very active person. I liked to run and play racquetball, various different things, and so I was concerned that I might be limited in many ways if I ended up with this lymphedema. Not to mention, right, that it certainly wouldn't be pleasant having one leg much bigger than the other. It also creates skin hardness and tightness, and you can't bend your limb as well because of the fluid. So there's a number of factors there. I was very concerned about that. I did decide to go ahead and get the lymph node dissection done, primarily because the best way to treat melanoma is to get it early. And so, especially at my age, 46, the doctors thought it was very important to be aggressive, to do as much as you can to take care of it now. So I got the lymph node dissection done. For me, the good news was that I had nearly zero swelling of my leg. I still do have just a little bit swelling in the upper leg, but I believe that's probably more related to the actual surgery itself than a true lymphedema situation. Lymphedema is really a permanent situation, or at least typically it is. I guess in some cases it may go away or lessen over time. But in my case, it wasn't a big deal. Very little swelling. When I did get swelling, I put my leg up for a few hours and it got better. And I'm happy to report, 6 weeks after my surgery, my second surgery here, I was able to run again and very comfortably without any issues. So so that was one of my major concerns. I just wanted to share it with you, so something to think about. The other thing I'll make you aware of is the surgery itself. It was a relatively easy, but it was certainly more invasive than the first surgery to do the lymph node biopsy and so forth. They essentially cut you back open and they essentially gouge out all the fatty tissue in the lymph node areas. It's not like they pull individual lymph nodes out. They just scoop out the whole area and take all the lymph nodes with it. And then the pathologist will go through and try to identify the lymph nodes in that material, and then they'll do biopsies on them. In my case, the biopsies were all negative. They took out 14 nodes. None of them showed any additional cancer. The other thing I would state about this is that when they do these biopsies, it's really not 100% conclusive. When they do the original lymph node biopsy, the one done with my first surgery, they are very thorough in the process of analyzing that lymph node for cancer. When they do these, they're doing more, and they take 1 or 2 cuts, but they're not as thorough. And if you have a small amount, it's possible they could miss it, even though they look at it. But certainly, having them come back and say they didn't find anything is absolutely a good indicator, and in my case, that was the case. One of the things related to this, because they go in and they kind of gouge out all the fatty tissue and so forth, it creates it just creates a lot of fluid in your body that comes out of this process, and you're stitched up, so it really has no place to go. So what they'll typically do when you do a lymph node dissection is they'll put a bulb drain on. Essentially, it's a tube that just runs into the area that they surgically removed this fatty tissue, and that fluid just drains out of your body through a tube into a bulb drain that you have kind of hanging on the outside of your body. They'll say that could be in for 4 to 6 weeks. In my case, it was in for 3 weeks. I think it varies widely by individual. It was not a great process, but it served its purpose. I was more than ready to take it out at 3 weeks. With that, I'm going to close out this video segment. In the next one, we'll talk more about the second treatment option, which is typically interferon.